Back in the time of the Stoics, there was philosophers that they would call penanink philosophers. And these are basically people that would write how to live a philosophical life or how to practice philosophy or would teach it. They'd preach how one should live and how one should practice philosophy and how one should read and go about their day to day life, but they wouldn't actually practice it. It was almost for show. They would just, do like what I'm doing now, except in their own way back in 2,000 years ago. And they'd quote people, quote famous philosophers, quote famous people throughout history, talk about stories of old, and take lessons out of these stories. And they try to tell people how they should live their lives and the things they should believe and how they should go about day to day. But if you took a look at their life, they would not practice what they preached. They would not be about it. They would just talk about it. And you do not want to be like this. You do not want to be someone who just talks a big game but has nothing to show for it, or tries to criticize people, say that, oh, you're not living right, you're not doing this right, you should be doing this, but behind closed doors, you don't even do what you tell them to do. You first must look at the man in the mirror and work on him. You can't try to project your ideas outward when you haven't even tested them internally. And you don't get people to change their ways typically by just telling them or talking to them. You have to show them. You have to be about it. You have to live the life that you are trying to convey to them they need to live. And then people will gravitate towards what you do when they see that you're happy, you're successful in your own way, you don't bring others down, you don't complain, you don't whine. When people see that you're living a life of that nature, then they will want to be doing the things you do. Then they will ask you questions. Then they will try to learn from you. But if you whine all the time and you complain and you don't really practice what you preach, why would anyone listen to you? Why would, like, it's basically when you're in gym class and your gym teacher is telling you to go run or go do something, or you're at a sports practice and your coach or your teacher is 300 pounds, and all you can't help but think, why don't you do this? How are you gonna sit here and lecture me on how it's valuable to run and how it's important to lift weights and eat healthy when you yourself are overweight, don't lift weights, don't do cardio? I mean, it's definitely I've definitely had that experience before. And even if you don't have malice in your heart while you do it, it just can't help but cross your mind when the overweight person tells you to eat healthy and run and train hard. You're like, what? Why don't you do it then? Like, you can't help but pass your mind. So I believe the same thing applies in life. And if you're going to try to practice or try to teach and preach these things, you really must be living the life and be an example. A lot of people say that even if Marcus Aurelius's meditations wasn't left behind, he would still be known as a philosopher and a stoic from the way he lived. You know, you they say we wouldn't need meditations, and I agree, to see that he was a philosopher and he lived a philosophical life, and he had good values and good morals and was a stoic. And you could strictly see this from his actions, the things he did while he was emperor. Not like selling the furniture in the palace when Rome was going through their plague, and helping out gladiators with giving them wooden swords, and not evacuating Rome when the plague was going on, and half of Rome was being wiped out. Him not abandoning his post because he knew he had a duty as emperor and leader to stay there and take that burden on with his people. You wouldn't need the writings to put two and two together and say, wow, that's a good person. That's a morally virtuous person. So that's how one should strive to live, I believe. And that is the best way to try to get people to convert to the ways you believe or how one should live. You have to look at the man in the mirror, start with the macro before you can work on the micro or the micros. Look on the micros before you can work at the macros. And yeah, it must start inside before anything externally will ever happen. And externals don't even matter. So just focus on you, focus on what you can do, focus on the inside, and make sure you practice what you preach.